Hi, it's Colleen and welcome back to my channel. This is the second video in a three-part series on the making of my first robe a la Francaise. I made this gown 1 year ago to attend an 18th century ball with the St. Louis Historical Sewing Society. It was a wonderful event and I was glad I had a chance to make one of these gowns. So in the last video, I showed you how I put together the petticoat. This video will construct the gown together, and in the next video, we'll finish it up and make all of the accessories that go with it. Come along with me. Well, come back in time with me and I'll show you how I made the gown. There's also some bonus footage and I'll explain that in a minute. Keep watching. I cut my bodice lining out of linen, and the thing to remember here is that the seams are now going to be on the outside of your bodice instead of on the inside next to your skin where you normally would then cover them with a lining. This is going to be the lining, so it'll be finished on the inside like this, and then all of this stuff gets covered by the fashion fabric. You can do this up as a seam, just like this, if you want it to fit exactly as the pattern is. But if you want adjustability, American Duchess shows you how to do that. I'm going to go ahead and cut it open as she recommends, and then I'm going to insert some boning and make eyelets and lacing, and then that way I can just pull it myself to adjust it to fit rather than trying to reach behind me and tie these ties or have someone help me tie the ties like this. Okay, here's the bodice lining done. This is the foundation on which the rest of the dress will be built. I did add in the spiral lacing. Anyway, I've got about 2 inches here at the back where I can tighten it in if I ever need to. I have serged all the raw edges. This is linen and it does fray. I've assembled the bodice and then I folded in and basted with a machine basting stitch, which is the longest stitch length and 0 tension. Then I stay stitched these curves because I don't want them to stretch out until I have a chance to put in the sleeves. And I left the front shoulder straps open. It was an absolute hassle to do, but I took my corset off of the mannequin and tried on this, and I'm glad I did because I ended up lowering this waistline just a smidge, and I was able to play around with the lacing here at the back. And what I found worked best on this particular outfit is to lace it so that it kind of does this at the back. As these come closer together, the waist drops. It was going to be too short-waisted otherwise. That is a great solution. I'm glad I did it versus having a back that was seamed up. So it gives me a lot of adjustment right in through here for how this sits on my body. I can put it on and lace it up. Okay, the very next step is to cut out the fashion fabric for the front and get it stitched on. And you work while this is still flat. So I can smooth that fashion fabric over here, pin it into place along these 2 seams, and then stitch it on all the way along here and baste it up here. The other thing I did while I was fitting this was decide how big my stomacher needs to be, because once you get it on and fitted, then you know how far apart these are going to be on your body. And you can then draft up, okay, well, I know I need this to be a minimum of 9 inches across the top. And at the narrowest part, 5.5 inches is the minimum. But when I draft it, I know what my measurements need to be, and they're right here. The book is good. Make sure you read the book, refer to it often. You will not be sorry if you do. I have moved to the ping pong table, and I would say if you have space for a ping pong table in your house, you should get one because it is handy for large sewing projects. I have my front bodice pattern piece, and you'll notice maybe right here that the embroidery stops quite a bit from the edge of the selvage. I want to line up the seam line or the fold line more or less with the edge of that embroidery while still being on grain. And that should make this part easier to fold under. I'm going to do that, but I'm going to figure out my pattern placement. I have put my pattern on Swedish tracing paper so I can see through it. I have to figure out where I want these roses to appear. The whole front section here will be covered in trim, and I haven't decided how much, maybe a couple inches. So I need to be sure that the part that doesn't have trim is pretty and I don't have any weird placements. Like I don't want to have, you know, like a nipple made out of a flower. So I'm trying to figure out maybe the best place. So my bosom's up here. This would give me a couple of flowers visible on the gown. The trim would come along here so I would see part of this flower. So just kind of think of that if you have a pattern fabric like this. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go right here. Okay, the other note I made is that I could extend this out a bit because you end up folding it over wherever your back pleats end up, and you don't have to necessarily line them up on the same seam. So I could decide that I like the look of this piece farther back than where the actual seam line is. So I'm going to give myself an extra inch just to have the ability to fold it over and place it wherever it is I want it to be once I get the back pleats done. That's one piece, and I will take this over to the other side, and I have to be sure to flip it like this because it's going to be the other side. So now I need to walk along and figure out where, oh, it's not the same over here. There's a different pattern repeat on this side. Okay, so that I should have paid attention to. Okay, lesson learned. Let's see if I can figure out where this is. I had to shift from this edge toward the center here to find the pattern repeat and try to mimic it. It's gonna not be exact, but as long as I have basically the visual idea of a flower in the same place on each side of the bodice, I think I'll be okay. There you go. This will be folded in, this will be folded in, and they'll be covered with trim. So yeah, that worked out okay. It's not perfect, but there's gonna be flowers more or less in the same general position. I have pinned that fashion fabric onto the front, lining up raw edges here, and then folding it over to meet the edge of the lining there. And then you're gonna stitch it along from here to here, and you're gonna leave this back bit just pinned for now. So I stuck a pin in where I need to stop sewing. Those front bodice pieces are sewn on with a very small stitch right here, and I have put some pins in to keep those two layers kind of lined up. This will fit smoothly on me. It's not smooth on my dress form, but I'm loving it so far. It's at this point in the editing process that I made a terrible discovery, and that is that there are 7 video clips missing. 7 clips. I have no idea what happened. It's been a year since I made the gown, so I can't remember. But what I discovered is that this last clip you just saw, that is what I had, and then I pick back up with the back already attached, the skirts are attached, all those dramatic pleats are done, and I'm like ready to put on the sleeves. That's the part that I think most people are curious about with these gowns. How do you make those big dramatic pleats? How do you attach everything to the bodice that you've made? How do those folds and everything get like arranged and tacked down so that you have something that looks good and is, you know, historically accurate and all of that jazz? It's gone. It's gone. So I was thinking about what to do. Obviously, I'm pretty upset, and I thought, well, I could just put the dress on a dress form and talk to you about what I did, or maybe I could just make another one. So since I've been through this process once, theoretically, it should go faster and easier a second time around. I do have enough of the green silk, I think, to make a matching outer gown. If you recall from the last video, I have the whole back panel of the petticoat that I can take off and use. Plus, I have 3 more yards. And this fabric is very wide. It's 60 inches wide. I think I have enough to make an outer gown that matches. I don't think I'm going to complete that green gown for this video, but I think I'm going to fill in the gap between the last video clip I have and the next video clip I have. In order to do that though, I need to make another gown to the point where I just left off, and then I can pick up with the next step in the process. So give me just a minute and I will be right back. I removed the back panel of green silk from this petticoat and replaced it with ivory silk taffeta. Now it's kind of a reversible petticoat that I can wear either way. I can either have the green side showing or the ivory side showing, as long as the gown that I'm wearing it with is long enough and full enough to cover the back. Now it's time to make the sacque back, which is really characteristic of the Robe a la Francaise. It's those beautiful pleats that come from the shoulders all the way down to the ground. The American Duchess Guide to 18th Century Dressmaking has a diagram in it that is very easy to follow, and it shows you what to do for half of your width of fabric, and then you just repeat it on the other side in the opposite direction. I've gone ahead and done half of my fabric already. The width you want for what you're working with across the back is 80 inches. As I mentioned before, I'm working with 60-inch wide fabric. So I went ahead and took off 20 inches before I cut the length I wanted from shoulder to floor. That way I had one continuous piece of 20 inches wide. I set that aside, and then I seamed my pieces together down the center with the selvage edges on the side and the cut edge in the middle. What you're going to do is you're going to measure from the center seam, and you're going to measure out 5 inches and make a mark. That is your first pleat, and that gets folded toward the center seam, just like this. We're just going to fold it and pin it to meet the other pleats. Your next pleat will be folded to within a 1/2 inch of the pleat you just made. So we're going to do another 5 inches, but we have to account for the 1/2 inch between the pleats. So I'm going to measure 5.5 inches from the edge of the pleat I just made. I'm going to make a mark, and I'm going to fold it in again, just like I did before. But I am going to stop about a 1/2 inch away from the previous pleat I made. Now we're going to make the pleat that sits on top of all the rest of the pleats. This is the part that can be narrower or wider depending on what part of the century you're in. I prefer a narrow pleat, which is what was typical toward the end of the 18th century. For this gown, I'm going to do 2.5 inch pleats. For the gown I made for the ball, I did 3-inch pleats, but you can do 4, you can do 5, it's kind of whatever you want. So decide ahead of time what look you like. You can experiment with pinning it, and then if you don't like it, you can just change it. I'm going to mark 2.5 inches from the folded edge of the pleat I just made. Before I make that pleat, I'm going to measure 5.5 inches out and make another mark. This is an outer pleat, so all of this fabric goes under what you just made to make a box pleat that's on top of the fabric. This is probably the hardest of the pleats to make, just because you're working with a bigger stretch of fabric and it has to go underneath the other ones. There we go. And I'm going to put a pin right here. We're going to adjust all these pleats in a minute, so don't worry about what this looks like down here. Next, I'm going to allow that 1/2 inch of space, and I'm going to do a 7-inch stretch. So we're going to measure 7.5 inches from the fold of the pleat that I just made. 7.5 inches. So this is a much bigger pleat, and we're going to go this way with it. So that should be just about a 1/2 inch of overlap there, with 7 inches of fabric caught up into the pleat. And then the American Duchess Guide says the important thing to do is this third pleat that you don't see. If you look on this side and I lift this up, there is another pleat under there. That's what gives your fabric the fullness to be able to go around your petticoat. If you don't put this other pleat in there, your fabric is going to kind of pull, and it's going to be too small to span the width. Mark 3.5 inches, and we're going to do it at exactly the same place as our previous pleat. So instead of leaving a 1/2 inch in between, whoops, there's my phone, we're going to pin it right to that edge, and it's going to hide right underneath the pleats that you just made. That is the gown pleated at the back. That's not hard to do. So don't be afraid of this part. The American Duchess Guide has a very clear diagram, or Patterns of Fashion has diagrams that shows you how to make these pleats, but you can also just mimic what I did. So that is the back of my gown pinned up and ready for the next step. We've got our lining here. We have our back that is adjustable, and we have our neckline. So I did fold in my seam allowance at the top of the neckline, and now I have all of this ready to pin up here. And then this will get sewn to the lining. This is that hidden pleat back here. You can see that right there. It hides right behind. We've got our box pleat on top. Everything's just beautiful. This side has the hidden pleat as well. Just need to adjust it a bit, but it's back there. And isn't that just gorgeous? It's gorgeous. These gowns are stunning, and this is what really makes them beautiful. What we're going to do next is we're going to figure out where we want this to be placed, And then we're going to stitch through the lining and the pleats right along here. Everywhere where we have an edge of a pleat, a fold, we're going to prick stitch by hand. And those prick stitches look beautiful, but they also hold all of this in place to control those pleats. And then the volume hangs free from here. I've got all those pleats stitched down, and here's how it looks. They're just little prick stitches right along there. And then here are these pleats in there. It is imperfect to try to fit one of these gowns on yourself, but as I proved with the last one, it is doable. Today, I'm at the point where I needed to put on all of my underpinnings and try everything on to see about getting a fit on this bodice. I have put it on and pinned where I think the bodice will go, right here. And then I've reached behind and tightened up that back lacing that we put in. Everything is fitting on my body the way I would like it. This back hits me right at my waist, and the front fits me as I would like it to fit me. And these gowns you're pinned into them. So you put on the stomacher and you pin these pieces over the stomacher or to your stays. I am satisfied with this fit. So I have basted down the shoulder straps, and I think everything looks good. Currently, this fabric is bunching up and loose. The next step is to put this all back on my mannequin and smooth and pin this fabric up and attach it to the bodice. And there you go, nice smooth fit. But you have to do it on a 3-dimensional form. You can't do it like flat on the table because you won't be able to get that fit. All right, I have pinned everything back on my dress form. I've got it out to my measurements as best I can. I have smoothed this fabric over and basted it down here and around the armhole, but short of the side seam right there. Up here, I've pinned this so that it's straight across the back. And then now what I'm going to do is arrange all of these pleats so that they're hanging flat and smooth and straight. You don't want anything to be off grain right in here, because what you're going to do, I'm going to fold this back. You are going to pin this right here, this where you've got it nice and smooth. You're going to pin it to the bodice, and you are going to put a few stitches down in here to keep the bodice of the back close to your body. Okay, put in a couple of pins. I want to catch the lining, but I don't want to pin it to my dress form. So we want to make sure that based on your fitting, this is exactly where it's going to lay on your body and everything is hanging straight. See that right there? I'm going to do the other side, and I'll take everything back off the dress form again, and I will do some stitches right next to this where I've got my pins, but on the fabric, not where the lacing is, right? We're going to put a couple of stitches in here, and you will not see that when you wear it. It's time now to make the single most terrifying cut of the entire project, and that is right here. I've put it back on the mannequin. I've got my little stitches in, as I told you about before. Everything's hanging like it should. The trick now is to smooth this fabric over the lining, and then you cut along the shoulder and along the seam line here until you get about 1 inch or 2 above the waist, and then you go straight out to the selvage. This is what I cut out of what was left of my fabric right there. Then it gets pleated to fit right about where the side skirts will go, and you make sure everything's hanging level, and then this gets smoothed back over and it gets folded and stitched right on top of that. As I'm editing this video, it's occurring to me that we might want to talk a little bit about sizing here. The back panel is made of 80 inches, which is the recommendation from American Duchess. But you may want more than 80 inches. If you have a larger body size, you may need that extra fabric to give you this pleating on the side, or you may prefer the look of a more densely pleated gown. That's up to you. For me, I like the sleeker look that you're seeing here. 80 inches gave me enough fabric to do that, but I wanted to put that out there that you can put more fabric into this back panel if you are a larger body size, if you have larger panniers, or if you just like the look of a more densely pleated gown. We'll do a little bit of a sped up version here of how this works on this side. Like I said, this is scary, especially when you don't have extra fabric. We're going to start cutting in just like this. It's scary, but it's not hard. And I think it's only scary if you don't have enough fabric. Remember that piecing is period. So if something were to go wrong and you had to piece in some fabric, it would not be the end of the world. It would be just fine. You could piece it together and take care of it. And out of that full 80-inch width, the only part you're actually cutting is these two small pieces. So if you ever needed or wanted to unpick all of this and use this silk for something else, it is mostly uncut. I'm going to go ahead and hand stitch this down. And one thing I wanted to say is to not be afraid of hand sewing. Everything that can be machine sewn on this gown is, but where it's going to be visible, it is better to do it by hand. You will be much happier with the look. It really doesn't take that much extra time, and it will elevate your sewing quite a bit. Here's where the clever bit is. If you are using 60-inch wide fabric, you need to cut the panels down by 20 inches per width that you use on the back, because you only need 80 inches, right? And if you have two 60-inch panels, you're going to be 40 inches too wide. So cut off 20 inches, the length of your fabric, and then cut that fabric in two, and there's your two panels for the back. So that leaves you with a 20-inch wide strip. From your 20-inch wide strip, you are going to cut the front skirt panels. And here is the really cool thing about this. There's basically no waste to be had here. So whatever that length was that you cut for your petticoat, cut that part for the skirt front. And then you're going to make a gore by doing an angle from 6 inches in from the side here down to 2 inches from the side down here. And you're going to cut the fabric. Then you take this piece and flip it over, and it's going to look like this. And you think, well, how does that work? Well, here's the trick. You line that up and stitch it on right there. This angle here is what's going to connect to the back panels to make a nice sweep of the skirt. So this becomes your pocket slit right here. You know, you stitch it up to this point, and then you finish this opening, and that's your pocket slit. Then you're going to pleat this to fit the front section of your bodice. And in order to get that V-shape opening that we see on a robe a la Francaise, you're going to fold this in to whatever kind of an angle you want. So you end up with kind of this trapezoidal piece of fabric. I have pinned all of this in on the left side of the gown, and I'm just showing you how it looks when it's done, and then together we'll do the other side. What you want to do is make sure when you start to pleat this back panel into the bodice, you want to make sure that this is laying very smoothly right in through here. If you're pulling it too far one way or the other, you'll start to see these wrinkles forming here. See, if I go too far the other direction, the wrinkles start to form. So you want to make sure that this right here with the pleats and everything is laying very flat and smooth right against the body. Then I have seamed up the front skirt to the back skirt. The remainder of the back panel plus this little top part of the gore on the skirt panel, those together get pleated into the pocket we made right here. Remember, we left a few inches open between the fashion fabric and the lining. So we're going to pleat these into the pocket such that they will lay nicely. You're going to move anyway, so as you're moving while wearing the dress, it's going to bunch up and move. Just don't worry too much about it, but essentially you just want to get that to where this piece is hanging straight and smooth and everything's tucked up in that pocket. From here, you're going to want to make sure that this fabric is going straight across. I have kind of a slubby fabric, so you want to pull this around until it's parallel with the ground, and you're going to turn in just a teensy bit right here. And I'm going to start pinning the bodice over the top of the skirt, because we're going to have the skirt go under the bodice here and in that pocket at the back. We're going to smooth it all the way up until this last little bit, and then we're going to pleat in the remainder so that it hangs nice all through here. This is my pocket slit, and it's not too far from where the pocket slit is on the petticoat. It meets up right here. You want to decide how much of the petticoat you want to show. I'm going for a cleaner line, and I'm not going to have a lot of embellishment on this petticoat, so I don't need it really wide to show off all of that. But if you want to do all of those ruffles and puffs and pleats and things like that to decorate the front, you might want this to go back just a little bit more to show more of the petticoat. For now, I have just gently pinned in what I think I'm going to want, and then I will step back when I get the second skirt done and decide if that's how I like it. You decide how far off the ground or what the length of the hem needs to be, and just check often. If it's not pleating in nicely and those pleats aren't falling on a nice line, it's because something is crooked. Either it's hanging too low or too high and it's not level with the ground. I'm going to put you way back in the corner and you can watch me as I work. When you're working on this, you can keep checking the length all you want to, and it may be hanging right because it's correct here and correct here. But if you sagged a little bit here in the middle, you're going to start seeing wrinkles where you don't want them. So I can tell from the way the wrinkles are that we're hanging too low right here. So I've got to put more of this skirt. It's hanging level with the ground, but you can see I have excess fabric right there. So I'm going to repin it right along here, and that should solve my problem. You can tell when it finally relaxes and lays where it's supposed to. You can just tell. Okay, so I've got roughly 4 inches of this turned back at the bottom. I'm going to just ballpark it, another roughly 4 inches. And then see how I just turned it back, and it will form the angle right here. You might be wondering what happens to the excess fabric on the inside of the skirt. This is very lightweight silk. You can just fold it down and leave it there. That's often what you see in the extant garments. They did not cut the top of the skirts. They just folded them to the inside. As much as I would like to finish this dress, I'm going to take a break, and we're going to return to my other dress because this now replaces the missing footage, and we will pick up with this dress another day. You can follow my progress on this on Instagram. I'm sure I'll come back to it in the next month or two, but it looks really good, and now I've been able to show you how you put on these beautiful back pleats and how you attach the skirts. The other day I made sleeves, and they are just hanging here for a minute, but I really like how they look. I ended up using the pattern for the sleeve from Simplicity 8161 because I know it fits me, but also it has extra room up in the sleeve head. And I did modify the bottom of it to match what I see in Patterns of Fashion. It's lined in linen, and it's sewn up by machine and finished by hand along this seam so that all the visible stitching is hand sewn, and it's kind of cut in. So currently if I pull the sleeve on, this is right at the inner elbow. The way you would construct it at this point is you would stitch in about, you know, this much of the bottom of the sleeve, and then you mount the remainder of the sleeve up on top, and you just pleat in the excess. So you're basically putting the sleeves on to fit, and then you get these little pleats that are like toward the back of the arm side right there. But there's no way for me to do that on myself. So I think I'm just going to insert the sleeve like normal, and then I will hand stitch the shoulder strap on top. So it looks like it's done the 18th century way, but I'm going to set it like I did on my other project that used this sleeve pattern. Just do a modern sleeve, but I know that those pleats need to be at the back. Anyway, I'm just going to play around with this and try and get these pleats to be about the same on each sleeve, and both pleats to be about the same size, and then that way it looks symmetrical. But I just can't see any other way of doing it without someone here to fit this on me. That will be just like a regular sleeve with the pleats, like a normal, 18th century sleeve pattern. So smooth around the front, the pleats are at the back, and I'm just gonna machine it in. It is Wednesday the 11th. I have 10 days to finish. That's when the ball is. I still need to install the shoulder straps, but that's easy enough to do. I'll cover this with a piece of the fashion fabric, and the gown is essentially wearable. I did end up getting my sleeve pleats, and I did have to move them further back than I anticipated. And as always, you have to kind of work to get this seam in the right place when you install 18th century sleeves. It's always much farther forward in the arm side than you think. And again, like these are farther back than you think. If you put them too far up here, it's like 1980s puffy sleeves, and you don't want that. But the pleats are essential because you get a nice smooth fit over the shoulder here, but I've got plenty of room. Like I can reach all the way across my body. These pleats give you the range of motion you need to actually move your arm. That's how you know you have a good fit in the sleeve. It needs to be quite up high in the arm side here, and you need a little bit of fullness to let you, move your arm around. So I'm extremely happy with the fit of the sleeves. I really only took them out once. I was about an inch off in my rotation on the first time I did it. I didn't have any idea how long to make this. I know I want a little bit of a train, but I don't think I want a lot because I'm going to an event that there will be dancing and stuff like that, and you don't want people stepping on your train. So there are ways to sort of make it bustle up in the back. You insert like a loop and some ribbons, and you can tie it through and bustle it up if you want to. I have a big square right here. So this is the front skirt. There's the gore that we put in, and then here's the extra on the back. And the instructions tell you to go ahead and like make that curve in somehow, just make it blend. But I think because I didn't know what I was doing and I wanted to err on the side of a longer train, this is too much fabric, I think. So I need to shorten it, but I'm not too sure how much. And I did see a blog post that was talking about calculating yardage for these dresses. And one of the things they said is that for someone my height, you can be 67 inches from the top of this back panel down to the hem, and that makes sort of a nice sweep. It's a train, but not like a wedding gown train. I think I'm going to go ahead and measure down 67 inches and see how much that would require me to take off here. It may be that it's much less of an angle than what I'm currently seeing. I've got my hem facing all sewn in, and I did not realize that I had such a nice match in the linen here. It was a nice piece of linen that was just enough to make this, and I can use it for, like I used it for the inside of the sleeve lining. That way if anything shows, it's sort of this warm beige color instead of white. So I like that. I did a nice herringbone stitch along the top, machine sewed the bottom and turned it in. I read something interesting. This is not my thought, but it was an interesting thought on creativity. And what it said was, the most creative people are the ones that have the least fear. I'm an overthinker, I'm analytical, and I'm very cautious in my everyday life. I don't tend to take a ton of risks. I try to think through what are the possible consequences of those actions, and sometimes it keeps me from doing stuff, So I am aware that this is one of my, I won't call it a flaw because I don't have any regrets in my life since I am not a big risk taker, but it does kind of hold me back a little bit sometimes. This dress is one of those things that I've been wanting to make for a long time, but it always seemed out of reach. And then when I started working on it, I thought and thought and thought, when should I start cutting the fabric? Have I done all the work I need to do? When it came time to leveling the hem, I'm like, oh, I should probably lay it out and try and take measurements. And, I just need to get in there and do it. So I finally just last night hacked away at the hem, and it worked. It worked. So I kind of get in my own way sometimes, and I think that this dress is a great example of that, because I could have made this in 3 weeks 6 months ago And instead, I got bogged down not only in my life being a little crazy, but also in the overthinking and the ruminating, I guess, that sometimes people do, and it gets in the way of creativity. So all of that is to say, sometimes just get in there and try something. Low stakes, right? This is not expensive fabric. I had it, you know, sitting in my sewing room anyway. I have enough to recut everything if I needed to, if I messed up, which I didn't have to do. But if I had enough fabric to fix the mistake. So I guess I'm just saying all of this to pass on some hard-learned lessons for myself. Just get in there, cut the fabric, try the pattern, make the fit adjustments, do 6 mock-ups if you have to. There's no risk in it. It's just fabric. It's not going to hurt you. This is a good stopping point for this video. The next step will be to add all of the trimmings, the floof, the fun, the flounce. We'll do all of that in the next video, and I'll show you how I did my hair accessories. I'll show you how I made some modern shoes look more like 18th century shoes, and we'll finish the entire look, and I'll show you how it was at the ball. So be sure you subscribe so you don't miss that, and you can always follow along with me on Instagram, where I'll continue working on the gown that I started in this video to replace that missing footage. It's looking really good, and I can't wait to finish it and show you, maybe in the next video, how that gown and the gown I wore last year look. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you next time.